I think that this is what people do looking at families, whether you're thinking looking at families theoretically or whether you're looking at families clinically, is it's for whatever reason, and it's interesting to think about the reasons, it's whoever you're focused on for some reason defines how old you think the family is. And you can have a totally different impression if you had met or focused on somebody else in the family. Because again, the family system is actually all ages. And different people move in and out of it by birth and death. But, and I think if you look at the child family literature, like one of the things that they teach you early on in working with kids is not to assume that the kid is the person with the problem just because the parents tell you that. And you look at the whole system and you try to figure out like either how the whole system is malfunctioning, which is really what you're supposed to do in family systems, or at the very least you think about like who's the sickest person really in this family. I think we don't do enough of that looking at older adults. That we start with however the older adult gets defined as the problem, we sort of take that at face value and stay with that, and we don't look enough at the likelihood that maybe it's actually, marital problems, but everybody's saying it's the caregiving for the older parent, or they're saying it's, are people, what's really going on is that the kids are going nuts, but it's easier to talk about dad because you think you've got more chance of changing dad's behavior than the adolescent's behavior.
I think that from what I've read, finding like the family system generally as a parental dyad. Parental dyad is older than the family system. I guess an older. I've never really heard this from older family, but that's how I would assume the parental dyad kind of determines that. Because when they're, when the kids are young and the parents are, a certain age, non-traditional older parents with young kids, it is an older family system that I'm on.
Yeah, but which parental dyad? You have multiple parents in any multiple generation family, right?
Yeah. Well, it's initial what the initial family setup is. So when you have like the initial dyad and the children, and then that's one family system, and then there's other family systems that it's embedded in or that are embedded within that follow that, but it still is in like a hierarchical order.
I think that's probably what most of the literature would focus on, but most of the literature is focused on minor children. And so you focus on like who the parents or the small kids that you're interested in are. But if you're really thinking more multi-generationally family system, again, those people have parents who probably have parents these days. And I can do this all day. Okay. We're going to do it just so you know these things. As you approach the readings for the course, you've got a lot of primary source research articles to look at, and certainly one of the things that you'll be doing repeatedly and a lot in the course is reading these papers and just figuring out what they mean and what you don't like about them, and then putting them together, applying them to problems, etc., however we decide that you're going to do that. And what I'm going to do today is just kind of take you through the content piece, and then in a couple of weeks, we'll, before I go over one of the papers with you, I'll do a kind of what I think of as visual statistics or intuitive statistics. It's like the essence of statistics, but without any math. This is intended to both help you think about the research piece of the paper, the results piece of the paper, but also to one of the things that happens as you get older is you have word finding problems. This is true. Desensitize you, lower your anxiety level to the math part. I do want to make it clear that I know that most of you are probably not real statistics whizzes and probably have no intention of becoming statistical whizzes. And those of you that do probably are still fairly early in the learning process. So you don't have to worry about or even try to read through all of the statistics themselves in the math piece of the results paper. I'll tell you what to look for, what you should look at in a minute. Just don't worry about those pieces. Look at the content. Look at the figures. As I said, in a couple of weeks I'll give you some idea, some orientation to how to think about some of the stats that you will see. So every research paper has like 4 major sections where you have the introduction results, introduction and literature review, the methods section, the results section, and the discussion section. We'll go through each of these. So the introduction, authors are going to present their literature review for this particular study, and most of the time it's pretty much basic scientific writing style that people are mostly going to present the literature that actually leads up to and supports their hypotheses. So one of the several reasons why it's a good idea to know a lot of stuff about gerontology, not just psych and aging, but physiology of aging and sociology of aging, so that you can read these things intelligently and evaluate them, is there probably is contradictory evidence. There almost always is, because the world's kind of complicated. And there's often alternative theories. Sometimes people actually set up their article to compare a couple of theories. More commonly, people sort of take a particular theoretical perspective, drive their hypotheses from that. Entirely or almost entirely only cite the literature that supports their point of view or supports those hypotheses, and then kind of go on from there. So certainly, as you're critiquing articles, and this will get better even as you go through this semester, and it will certainly get better as you go through your graduate training, because you'll just have more and more knowledge of the literature and more knowledge of theories of aging. The kind of questions to ask yourself are the questions that are here. Do you know of contradictory evidence? Do you know of alternate theories? And also, just is the argument coherent? Sometimes people actually sort of manage to contradict themselves, even in a short lit review for a paper, or people just say something that just actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It doesn't happen a lot by the time you get through the review process, but it's interesting what survives reviews and actually gets out into the literature. Methods. One of the things that you can always criticize when you're looking at a paper is where the subjects come from, because it's just not possible to get a really good sample. There are better samples and worse samples, depending on your purpose, but there's always things wrong with the samples. A lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks is going to be based on fairly small lab-based studies, and it's really typical in those studies that your young sample is college students from the psych department subject pool, and your old sample is whatever older adults you can round up and get to come in and do your study. And there's usually no middle group. So you have these are often known as age extreme studies, because you're comparing young people and old people. One thing you really want to think about as you look at any one study, but also as you combine studies, because it sometimes is a source of